is a repository of biodiversity. This diversity of plant life, comprising over 3 lakh species, has a critical role in the sustenance of all life forms. But today, this plant diversity faces several threats. Indiscriminate exploitation is a threat known to all. But there are other threats which are as detrimental as overexploitation. One such threat is from alien plant species which have stealthily entered India and colonized large tracts of land within a short span of time. These are biological invaders, more commonly known to us as weeds. Weeds are plant species that are of no immediate value to human life. Native weeds, however, are not considered a threat to other species because nature has developed ways of controlling them. But several alien plant species which have invaded India from distant lands from the early 60s have come to pose a serious challenge to native plant wealth and human life as well. Some of the dreaded invaders are the Parthenium hystrophorus, Lantana camara, the Chromalina odorata or Eupatorium, Mimosa invisa, and the Mycenia micrantha. Of these plants, the Parthenium hystrophorus, commonly known as carrot weed or white top, is considered the earliest and the most dangerous weed to enter India. It was first noticed near Pune in 1956. Parthenium hystrophorus is a herbaceous erect annual plant belonging to the family Asteraceae. It is a native of the Latin American region. From there, it is known to have spread into several areas of North America, Africa, Asia, and Australia. It is surmised that Parthenium possibly entered India from the US through imported food grains or through the import of seed lots. The most affected states in India are Uttar Pradesh and Bihar in the north, Maharashtra and Gujarat in the west, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka in the south, West Bengal and Orissa in the east, and Madhya Pradesh in central India. It is estimated that Parthenium has come to colonize a total of 5 million hectares in India. Of late, this fast-growing, fast-reproducing exotic weed has conquered large areas in Kerala. Its growth on the Attapadi hill ranges adjacent to the Tamil Nadu border is rampant. Large tracts of grassland and acres of both cultivable and fallow land have come under the grip of Parthenium, posing several problems to the people of Attapadi, who by and large are small and marginal farmers. The challenge here is to eradicate Parthenium. Spearheading the challenge is AHAS, that is, the Attapadi Hills Area Development Society, which is dedicated to the cause of conservation and regeneration of the environment in the depleted hill ranges of Attapadi. What makes Parthenium such a dangerous weed? It is a shrubby plant that grows to a height of 2 meters with an erect stem and a deep taproot. The leaves are deeply lobed and hairy. Parthenium starts flowering about a month after germination and keeps reproducing at least 3 generations a year under favorable conditions. It gets the common name white top from its innumerable white creamy flowers. Each plant produces about 5,000 to 10,000 tiny and extremely light seeds which get dispersed easily. The seeds can remain viable for germination up to a period of 12 years. The plants flourish well in alkaline, clayey loam soil, which is characteristic of the Attapadi hills. The pollen grains inhibit fruit set in vegetable crops. In addition, Parthenium pollens are an allergen for both man and animals. Incidences of dermatitis, asthma, bronchitis and other allergies are known to be common in areas colonized by this potent weed. Livestock fed on Parthenium contract bitter milk disease, a cause for panic among the cattle rearing community of Attapadi. The cut stumps do not wither away but sprout again within 30 days. Such a vegetative growing power makes Parthenium an aggressive weed, not easy to eradicate. The 3 control methods used the world over to control the growth of Parthenium are the mechanical method, chemical management using herbicides, and biological control measures using certain insects, fungal pathogens and competitive plants. The mechanical method of plucking and destroying plants is found to be effective in small areas. Ahads has come up with a new control strategy which, besides eradicating the weed, provides a useful product through the involvement of the people. In this endeavor, the first task is to make the people aware of the ill effects of Parthenium and mobilize support for the income-generating process of Parthenium eradication.
So this movement actually started with our awareness campaign, followed by a training program for about 800 people and covering about 28 training programs. These people, on getting training, they have started this eradication movement for about 16 kilometer length on the roadside. They have eradicated about 150 hectare in the wasteland, and also about 25 hectare in the community land and about 12 hectare in tribal hamlets. Now they have about 9 units, and each unit is producing about a ton of this Parthenium compost.
The Attapadi hills are home to the Irula, Muduga and Kurumba tribes. Any movement has to begin from organizing the people. Rightly then, the Parthenium eradication movement began by forming units of 10 people each who would destroy the weed in their vicinity. Quite appropriately, the units embarked on the eradication program on June 5th, 2004, which is observed as World Environment Day. The uprooting was done before the plants attained the maturity stage of seed setting. The uprooted plants go into the making of compost in 3 different ways. 1. Simple aerobic compost. 2. Semi-aerobic compost. And 3. Vermicomposting. For making any kind of compost, the collected plants are chopped to pieces of 1 to 2 centimeters in size. In the simple aerobic compost procedure, the chopped pieces are spread in layers of 20 to 30 centimeters thickness. Cow dung slurry is sprinkled on each layer. In this manner, the chopped pieces and cow dung slurry are layered to a height of up to 1 meter. After spraying water to maintain the desired moisture, the layers are kept covered with polythene sheets for 60 days to obtain compost. Ahads has now introduced mechanized shaft cutting machines to reduce the drudgery of shredding the plants manually. In the second method of semi-aerobic compost, Parthenium pieces are covered with the inoculum of a fungus, Pleurotus sajor kaju. Upon this, a layer of urea is spread to aid decomposition. The biomass temperature is monitored to maintain a moisture level of 60%. The biomass is turned once a month to make decomposing even. In the third method of vermicomposting, a worm belonging to the Eutrilla species is introduced into the shredded Parthenium mixed with cow dung slurry. In about 70 days, the vermicompost will be ready. The compost produced meets the required standards. Tests conducted at Ahads have shown that the carbon nitrogen and the nitrogen phosphorus potassium are in the desired ratio. Under the Ahads Parthenium eradication project, over 145 hectares of fallow and cultivable land and over 16 kilometers of roadsides have been cleared of the weed. The compost produced at the behest of Ahads is used for its afforestation project. Weed management and afforestation are not independent of one another. They are aimed towards restoring degraded forest wealth and the conversion of fallow land into food-producing tracts. This initiative of Ahads is a fine example of eco-restoration with people's participation, which is bound to decimate the supremacy of Parthenium, the marauding weed.
Hello and welcome to the session on SDA service. Selective dissemination of information service or SDA service is a current awareness service. So, for the better understanding of this concept, a brief description about current awareness service is needed. Current awareness service is a service intended to meet the current approach of specialist users of the library. As far as a researcher or a specialist user is concerned, the current approach is very important. The current information is likely to influence the trend and progress of research. It should be made available to the specialist users at right time. The current approach to the information is a browsing approach. The user does not need any specific piece of information, neither he has any specific question to be got the answer, nor he like to have a comprehensive overview. What he needs is only a brief information about the trend and development of his field of specialization. It is an ongoing approach and it is essential for each and every researcher so as to avoid the duplication and the obsolescence of work. Definitions of SDA service. Here we can have some definitions of SDA service. Hans-Peter Lund of IBM introduced selective dissemination of information service. He defined SDA service as that service within an organization that concerns itself with machine assisted channeling or computerized channeling of new items of documents of current nascent information from whatever source to those point within the organization where the probability of successfulness in connection with current work or interest is high. Sushil Kumar defines SDA as the practice in some libraries such as special libraries whose uses are small in number to maintain reader profiles which indicate the subjects of interest to them, advanced or elementary level in which they are, and the form in which information is required. Whenever information is related to the subject of a reader's interest received in the library, he is at once informed. UNESCO defines SDA as the regular provision of scientific information to individuals or corporate users on predetermined subjects. Dr. S.R. Ranganathan defines SDA as documentation list on specific topic anticipated to engage the attention of the members of parent body. Fidotan defines SDA as a method of providing personal current awareness information to individuals or groups. In short, it can be defined in a comprehensive sense that SDA is a type of current awareness service which under optimum conditions involves screening of documents, selecting information exactly tailored to meet the specific research needs of each user or a group of users, and supplying the information directly to each individual or group so that user can keep abreast of the latest developments in the area of his specialization. Objectives of SDA service: to keep users of system informed of new developments and trends in their respective field of specialization, to meet the specific information need by providing only relevant information without overburdening them with non-relevant and unwanted documents, to save the time and energy of scientists by screening out the irrelevant information. Need and relevance of SDA service: the conventional information system like library, the documents pertaining to a discipline are assumed to be of interest to the users in that discipline. All the activities in the library are based on this principle. Library procure, locate, classify, organize and make accessible the documents discipline wise with the assumption that they will serve the information needs of the users in that area or discipline. This has been done without ascertaining the exact information needs of that discipline. Moreover, the compartment concept, the traditional subjects are no longer exist, and research is at present a teamwork of researchers belonging to the different discipline and subjects. As a result, the newly emerged subjects are interdisciplinary in nature. The traditional method of discipline-wise classification process of documents, especially in the case of primary literature, may no longer be sufficient to meet the nascent information needs of interdisciplinary nature of the specialist community. Hence, the relevance of a highly individualized information service to keep each scientist ahead with latest developments and trends in his area of specialization, taking into consideration his individual information needs, is high, and which is called selective dissemination of information. Let us understand the characteristics of SDI service. 1. It is a current awareness service meant to keep its user abreast of the latest developments in their field of specialization. 2. It is a personalized service meant for an individual or group of individuals having identical information needs. 3. Information provided through SDI is exactly tailored to meet the specific information needs of each specialist user. 4. It is a quick service and which provides pinpointed information. 5. It is a service meant for specialists and research community. Now let us understand components of SDI service. SDI service has the following components, that is, user profile, document database, matching mechanism, notification, feedback mechanism, etc. Let us have a brief description of these components. 1. User profile. The entire operation of SDI service is on the basis of the assumption that the information needs of user is different from other user. Since the SDI service is a personalized service, the subject interest of each user is found and which is to be compiled systematically. It is known as user profile or user database or user record. In each user profile, the subject interest of user is expressed in the form of keywords, subject headings, class number, code number, and pattern of terms. Keywords are selected from standard thesaurus and subject headings list in order to ensure the vocabulary control. In short, user profile is a symbolic description of a documentary or information requirement of a specialist user. A good user profile should contain the following features of information related to concerned users. User's identity specification. In this feature, user's personal information such as name, address, contact number, email, etc. is to be included. Qualifications and experience of the user. This feature includes the user's educational qualifications, related experience and profession involved. It assists to gather qualitative information in the context of user's knowledge and perceivable capabilities. Subject coverage in details. This is the cardinal part of user profile on which the required information is scanned, retrieved, and then delivered to the concerned users. Subject coverage should therefore be carefully interpreted. That could be explained into following segments. A. Scope of the core subject matter. To scan the core subject matter, it is necessary to mention the broader subject of the study, subsidiary subject related to it, title or topic of the study, and a number of feasible keywords that can keenly interpret the core subject matter while essential information is not skipped over. B. Purpose of the study. It is essential part in determining the volume of information to be distributed on the basis of mode of work such as research work, course work, article writing, making lectures or speeches, etc. C. Date range of publications. This option indicates that those information are to be gathered which are published within this specified date range. D. Medium of language required. Information may be published in different medium of language. So, there should be the option to specify that on which medium of language information is to be delivered. For example, English, Bengali, Arabic, Urdu, Persian, French, Chinese, etc. F. Sources of reference. It would be very useful if the user also supplies some references to papers, journals, reports, bibliographic databases, etc., which he considers relevant to his area of work. 2. Document profile or document database. Document profile is a collection of records, and each record is a collection of essential bibliographical details and subject description of each document. As and when new document is received in the library or information centers, the document profile is prepared. The subject content of document is expressed in the form of keywords, subject headings, pattern of terms and code of numbers. Keywords and subject headings are selected from the same thesaurus used for user profile to ensure the vocabulary control and to make the matching with the user profile more easy. The preparation of document profile comprises the following steps. A. Selection of appropriate bibliographic items to be included in the database or document profile. B. Generating of keywords in the documents. C. Entering of keywords by an appropriate input device and storing the information in the storage device. D. Conversion of details into an appropriate bibliographic record format. E. Preparation of searchable file. 3. Matching mechanism. It is a mechanism to match document profile with user profile. At fixed intervals, say weekly or fortnightly or monthly, the two files, that is user profile and document profile, are compared. When a close match is observed, as per the instruction between any user profile and a document profile, the details of both records are noted. Even though users' interests have been represented in terms of keywords and codes, the profile will complete with the declaration of level of match. Suppose a user has given 5 keywords for his profile. It is to be found out whether a user will accept a document as relevant if a document description contains any of these keywords, or a minimum number of keywords, or a specific combination of keywords. It is not possible to make a correct combination or to set a minimum number. A continuous analysis of feedback from users is necessary to determine the best level of match. 4. User SDI system interface. An interface is a common boundary that permits useful interaction and communication. SDI system interface consists of the following 3 components. 1. SDI notifications of recent literature that match given users' interests. 2. Request to users to provide feedback on the notification sent to them. The feedback provided by the user is about the usefulness or degree of user satisfaction of the notification sent to him. 3. Intermediaries of SDI system. They are the information scientists and the workers within the organization who interact with the users and are knowledgeable about the document database and its characteristics. 5. Notification. Each individual user will receive notification from the system if any close match is observed between his profile and document record. The notification is sent to alert user that certain documents are likely to be relevant to his interest. The notification will include the bibliographic information and abstract of the document. Sometimes the notification will include the item itself or the copy of the document. It will depend the characteristic of the system and the database. 6. Response or feedback. Feedback mechanism is one of the unique features of SDA service. According to this method, responses of each recipient on each document can be made available. The user can inform the system the satisfaction level of the received item. 7. Readjustment of profiles. Responses and feedbacks received from user is carefully analyzed, and if necessary the profiles are adjusted or level of match is altered. Since the feedback mechanism is treated as an integral part of SDA system, the modification of profile becomes a continuous work, so that even the slightest change in the interest of user will naturally reflect in his profile. How SDA service functions. Now let us examine how SDA service functions. By observing the following picture, we will get a very clear picture about functioning of SDA service. The first step of SDA service is the collection of queries and special areas of user community. Followed by this, user profiles are prepared. The details of user profile and their preparation has been already discussed. The second step is the procuring of documents and preparation of document profile. The document profile details and preparation has been discussed in this session. The third step in the SDA service is matching of user profile and document profile. When a close match is observed as per instructions between user profile and document profile, the details of both records are noted. The fourth step is the notification of the result to users. The notification may include bibliographic details of documents, abstract and or the document itself or copy of the same. The fifth step is feedback. This is the unique feature of this mechanism. The user may not be satisfied by the receipt of the document given by the system, because the received document may not be sufficient to fulfill his needs. In this situation, he can give the feedback so as to make necessary changes in user profile. The last step in the SDA service is modification in the user profile according to the suggestions given by the user, and process continues as mentioned above. Now let us check difference between current awareness service and SDA. SDA is one of the mode of current awareness services. Even though both services are intended to meet the current approach of users, some differences are there between these two services. Current awareness service is a manual service, but SDA is a computer based service. Current awareness service is meant for a heterogeneous group of users having different information needs. In current awareness service, a user will have to go through a lot of literature until he gets his relevant document, because same documentation list is circulated among different users. But SDA service is a service in which target is an individual or a small group of individuals having identical information needs. In short, SDA is a highly personalized service. In SDA service, there is a feedback facility to inform the level of satisfaction about the document received, but in current awareness service, this facility is hardly available. Computers and SDA service. SDA is a computer based information service and a mechanism through which the individual information user can expect to receive regular notification of new literature and data in accordance with his or her statement of interest or profile. Accelerated growth of information in the sense of forms and areas made a problem in this service. Due to the availability of abundance of information sources, the preparation of document profile becomes also difficult. In these circumstances, the online and offline databases were developed and this problem was solved. Today, there are a number of online and offline databases in various disciplines. Some of them are Chemical Abstracting Service, Institute for Scientific Information, Institute of Physics, Electronics and Control, etc. The latest information and communication technology made the SDA service more comprehensive and more speedy. Formerly, the matching between user profile and document profile and the intimation of result to its users were done in some periodical intervals such as weekly, fortnightly or monthly. But today, the matching can be done whenever the document database update and the result can be informed automatically to the users. Let me summarize what we have discussed so far. The selective dissemination of information service is a personal service of notifying the items, documents, information likely to be interest to individuals and is also matching of required information with the potential clients. It is in fact a service of providing textual information particularly to the researchers. It is a current awareness mechanism through which the individual information user can expect to receive regular notification of new literature and data in accordance with his or her statement of interest or profile. But this task becomes very difficult to perform due to accelerated growth of publications in every moment. Moreover, the exact matching of information is also difficult matter through the contemporary approaches of SDA service. The application of latest information and communication technology helped to solve this problem to a great extent. Now, you can try to answer the questions given here. 1. Define SDA service. 2. What are the main components of SDA service? 3. How SDA service functions. 4. Who defined SDA first time? Now, you may go through the reference books for further reading. Reference service by Krishan Kumar, Vigas Publishing House, New Delhi, 1987. Information and Reference Source and Services by Anil Dhiman, SS Publishers, New Delhi, 2005. Documentation and Information Services Techniques and Systems, 2nd edition by Guhabi, World Press, Calcutta, 1983. www.smarttoolkit.net. Thank you for watching this program. Hope you enjoyed the session. See you next time. Till then, goodbye.
Professor Zoltan Rasch is a theoretical physicist from Hungary. He works in the Eötvös University, Budapest. He is a research professor as well as a member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Professor Rash, being a physicist, could you please explain how you get involved in climatology?
Well, my basic research is in statistical physics, in equilibrium and non-equilibrium phase transitions, precipitation, and this type of topics, which are closely related to climate problems. If we just think about clouds, how the clouds are formed. But actually I got involved not because of this, but because about 10, 12 years ago, there was much hype in the media, and with our friends we started to check out a little bit that is it true what is said in the media. And we found out that quite often those were just statements which were coming out of blue. Of course, when we talked to climatologists, they said that this is not how you have to understand. You have to understand as we say it, but the media distorts it quite often. Okay, so this lasted for a while, and we started to follow some simple time series of temperature, various data about the winds in Europe and so on, and we found out that most of the time, whatever appears about climate, it is distorted a little bit even by the climatologist. And we felt somehow that there is a political overtone in all these problems, and somehow the activists took over the field. And we think that this is slightly dangerous, because climate has been handled by activists before. If we take, for example, the Little Ice Age, which started around the 16th century or 15th, 16th century in Europe and lasted almost 500 years. This was a period when the temperature didn't go very much down, but actually what happened is that the seasons, the cold season, expanded a little bit. So, for example, in May there was a 5-day freezing, which means that whatever was sown was frozen and disappeared. And in September already, for example, which is very unusual in Europe, most part of Europe, the snow was falling down. And this means that people couldn't eat because they couldn't produce anything in the very short season, warm season. And of course this made nervous the people, and they were looking for somebody to blame, something to blame. And at the beginning it was just like now, it is the whole humanity to blame, so the priest would stand out and say that you were sinning and this is what you get for sinning. Okay, and but they couldn't do too much with this general accusation, and at one point the people wanted real accusations against somebody. So what happened is that they were choosing somebody, a woman from the end of the village, and they said that this is the woman who is a witch, and he is causing all our troubles, the weather maker witch. The trouble was that this couldn't go very far with these accusations, because in the Bible it is said that the weather is made by the God. Okay, so when the people brought the woman to the nobleman that she should be burnt, then he sent it to the priest, and the priest was telling that, well, this is not my job, or it cannot be done actually, because it is written differently in the Bible. So after many years, these discussions all over philosophy and in the usual media at that time, they persuaded the Pope to issue a bulletin in which it was agreed that from now on, weather making is a sin, the witches can be burnt for that. And then slowly it started, and during the period from 1500 to 1800, there were about, well, there are various estimates, but about 100,000 to 1 million witches were burnt in Europe. And of course, this shows that somehow the frustration leads to activism, and the activism leads to tragedy. In some sense, all this was for none. Clearly, we know that it is not the witches who made the bad weather, but crazy people are always around. And for example, at the time there was a kind of philosopher monk who was suggesting that we are burning somehow randomly these witches, but we should somehow scientifically burn the right number of witches in order that there would be the right weather. So in this sense, you can see some analogies that how the people nowadays as well trying to find the scapegoats, trying to change something which is extremely hard to change, and you don't know what will be the effect of the change. So I think it is in some sense the responsibility of scientists who are close to the field of climatology to really make some checks whether everything is going as it should be in a normal science. Of course, in science, there are sometimes questions which cannot be answered at the given level. To bring an example from mechanics, Newton, who was writing down first the equations of mechanics, and basically he explained all the planetary motions. And this was a big achievement, and everybody knew about it at the time. And one of the bishops asked Newton that, but can you also explain the regularity of the distance in the planetary distance from the sun? Because there is a regularity which is called the so-called Titius-Bode law. And Newton said that, I cannot explain it because this is initial condition. This is given by the God. Once he put there at the appropriate places the planets, they are going according to mechanics. That is what my theory explains, but I cannot explain something that how they were put there. Now, of course, nowadays already there are some theories which can explain these laws, give arguments that how they can, even if the initial conditions were completely different, they are leading to the same regularity in the positions of the planets. Now, at Newton time, nobody, if you gathered all the best minds of the world, they couldn't have solved the problem because it was not within the realm of the given science. Now, you can say something similar in about climatology, in the sense that there is a science which involves very many very complicated issues, starting from the physical processes to the mathematical handling on the computer of the equations to the enormous databases with which you want to somehow a consistent picture. And maybe at this moment, simply these equations are too complicated, or we don't know a large number of those equations which should go into the story. So clearly there may be the possibility that at this moment you are not able to predict the future from the present knowledge. Okay, so this is why I think that this is a serious issue of climatology. I would like to emphasize that climatology, of course, is a serious science, and the people there are making lots of effort to understand things, but the issues are very complicated, and sometimes because there are uncertainties in the answers, politics takes over in interpreting the issues.
Okay, from the theoretical physicist point of view, could you explain what are the major challenges the climatology subject is facing today?
Well, of course, if you would like to solve the problem, the challenge would be to predict what will happen in the next 50 years or the next 100 years. Though, this is extremely hard. This is a scientific problem in which you can see somehow two extremes. One extreme is this short time limit. Well, meteorological predictions nowadays can be trusted for, let's say, for the next 5 days or something like that. And it is the same model which is giving you this very short time behavior, but after 5 years it disappears. You cannot trust really the present models. Now, suddenly the climatologists use the same models. Basically it is the same, and running on a larger scale, and they claim that, well, because over sufficiently long time there is an averaging process. Just in statistical physics, complicated processes are averaging out, and this is why their model can predict what's happening in the intermediate times, let's say, of 50 years or 100 years. In the same way as if we take this the air in this room, it consists an enormous number of molecules. If you would like to solve the Newton's equations for this, you would go nowhere. You wouldn't predict anything good. But if you average all the motions, then you can predict all the thermodynamic laws and the properties of this gas in this room. The problem with the climatology models that if you try to ask the climate models that what will happen on the long run, then they cannot again explain what's happening on the scale of 10,000, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 years. Okay, because that is the issue of the so-called ice ages of glaciations. That with a period of the order of 100,000 years, during the last 800,000 years, we are always spending about 80, 90,000 years in a very cold period of the order of 8 degrees cooler than at present. And then we are living our good life during this 10, 15,000 years, which we are at this moment. And of course, one would like to know what will cause these ice ages, okay? And what will cause jumps of temperature of the order of 8 degrees, let's say. And this is an issue which should be solved. This is a scientific issue, and lots of people worked on it, and there are about 10 different theories of ice ages, which all roughly explain that something happens in every 100,000 years, but all these theories are starting with different premises, have different effects which are causing the big changes, and somehow they don't have any consequences which could be checked in whatever way, what we are used to in physics, that once you have a theory, you are testing in some way, either predicting something in the future or predicting something in the past which nobody has seen before, but then you are looking for that phenomena. And what I'm trying to say that this is what, even as a physicist, I was interested enough, and during this last 10 years, I went through the theories of ice ages, and the conclusion, if you go through, is that there are many theories, all of them are saying that something is there, but if you can arrive at the same results from very different starting point and from very different using very different effects, then I would say that none of these theories are working. So we don't have at this moment an understanding of why does the Earth go into this ice age type behavior climatologically. So I would say that all the models, whatever the models are, have a basic problem. The basic problem is that if I look at short time, after a while the model becomes, after 5 days or something like that, becomes bad. If I look at long time, the model is again becoming bad on the scale of several thousand years. And then the claim of the climatology society or community is that the model works in between, in the middle part. And as far as physics is concerned, we do not have such theories which would break down at small time, large time, but they are good in the middle. Okay, so this is why I think that the predictions going for, let's say, 50 years or 100 years are basically cannot be trusted. This is my belief, of course, and this is a difference with many climatologists. But of course, in order to go in a very difficult problem, you have to trust that you will arrive at something. So otherwise, you can't really go very far. Okay, so this is how I think that.
Yeah. How dependable our data are on which the scientific community is working on?
Well, of course, there are again these different time scales are coming in, and you have some knowledge about the temperature variations, let's say the drilling in the ice in the Antarctic or in the Greenland, and it is quite good. It is giving the accurate reading roughly of the temperature on a time scale of, if we go back, let's say 100,000 years, then it is of the order of 100, 200, 500 years, the accuracy of the determination of what temperature we are looking at, what time we are looking at in the past. And if we come closer now, let's say we are going the much contested last 1,000-year problem, then there are many different ways of determining the temperature, tree rings, again the sedimentations and various geological methods, but time to time you see that statistics and the analysis is coming into the picture, and it makes it uncertain what we see. What one can hope that the situation is becoming better is that since 1979 we have a satellite observation of the temperature of the Earth, satellite observation of the coverage of the by clouds of the Earth, and there is lots of data which is coming in, and this is what I'm trying to say when I'm saying that the handling of databases is a very important part of climatology nowadays, because you have enormous amount of data coming in, and you have to somehow incorporate it or make it agree with the models what they are trying to develop. Okay, so there is problems, of course, with the data. If you come back, even if you say that the present situation with the satellites, you will see that the satellites have fluctuations. They are sometimes sinking in the in the atmosphere, or because of the some problems with them, and well, you have to work on it. I think, but it is getting, I think, better and better. Of course, if you look at the usual gathering of statistics, let's say the measurements of the temperature at various meteorological stations, there also nowadays you have already automatized systems. But if we go back, let's say 50 years in time, then only the caretaker of the equipment was reading the equipments, and sometimes they didn't read, they just wrote in some numbers, because you can see there is a so-called weekend effect in the old data, that if you look at the statistics of the weekends readings, it is different than the weekdays readings. So clearly there are small uncertainties in the story, but in general I think the problem is that the Earth wasn't covered earlier, more or less evenly. Even nowadays there are the satellite data, and there are lots of stations on the ground, but there are much less in the oceans, which are, of course, we have to recognize that is the more important part, both because the heat capacity of the oceans, the intake of energy or outgoing energy is much larger than in the ground. So that is still the problem.
Okay, from the layman point of view, is it worth to believe this scientific community on this subject about predictions?
Layman is in hard situation, because the layman is nowadays bombarded by these messages which try to convey that you are sinning, yes, and because of you there is the increasing temperature. I believe that that part of the story, that there is an increasing CO2 concentration, carbon dioxide concentration in the air, that is partly coming from the humans. And the question, does this cause the increase of the temperature, which is observed in the last 150 years of the order of 0.7 degrees? Is it what is causing it? Because then, well, it is still a question whether it is bad or not if there is a 0.7 degrees of temperature change, because nobody says at this moment, I believe, that the basic inhabitability of Earth has changed much because of this 0.7 degrees of Celsius. But of course, there is the chance that it is coming from the human behavior. And then you have to ask that what can you do, and the layman is doing every kind of, well, at least they are trying to make the layman to do sometimes crazy things. But I would say that at this moment, the layman can say that there is no firm evidence that I am the sinner. Okay, because the chain of argument which is coming to this sin is going so that there is an increase of CO2, and this is probably cars and every industry, and then because of this increase of CO2 there is a slight warming. If we just take that what is the greenhouse effect of the carbon dioxide, then that is a small amount of change in the temperature. That is not the important part. The important part is that people in these models assume that there is a positive feedback in connection with the clouds. Okay, because if there is a little bit of increase of temperature, there is a little bit of increase of evaporation, there is a little bit of increase of clouds, but the clouds then are assumed to carry a much larger greenhouse effect, and this much larger greenhouse effect is of the order of 10 compared to the CO2. So this would be really a serious effect. But the problem with this is that the clouds also have an albedo effect. If I just have nothing around, I just evaporate liquid and I have a cloud, then there are two things which is occurring. If you look from above, from a plane, then it is white. Yes, clearly it is reflecting, so the albedo increased. So in this sense, less energy is coming on the Earth, so this is a cooling effect. The other one is that, of course, it is water vapor, it is a greenhouse effect, and it has its own greenhouse contribution. Now, the question is, what is the difference of these two effects? And at this moment, nobody can really tell what is the situation. Because if the cloud is formed at not very high distances, let's say 500 meters, then it is known, actually these are satellite measurements, it is known that it has the albedo effect is winning. So it is actually cooling the Earth. But if you have a cloud at 10,000 meter high, a cirrus cloud, then you will have a greenhouse effect overwhelming the albedo effect. So, and what's happening when you really increase the CO2, which one will win on the overall scale, nobody can predict at this moment. So this is the crucial matter and here I think the physicists have a very constructive approach. At CERN in Geneva, they use these bubble chambers, which are used for particle physics. They use it for studying how the precipitation occurs and what kind of distribution of particles occurs, because this distribution will determine what type of albedo a cloud has and what type of greenhouse effect the cloud has. So within 5, let's say, or 10 years, partly the physicists will contribute to this debate by at least giving some data, experimental data, as you can imagine, is very hard to come by, where really you control something in climate and then you are looking at the effect. So they will have an experiment where they can control parameters and can tell what kind of clouds are forming. Okay, so this will be very important, I think, and I think at that time it will be clearer what is how much of the sin of increasing the CO2 will increase will lead to large changes in temperature. But really, if you look at the historical temperature record, then you will see that if we go back a few million years, then the temperature of the Earth was about 8 degrees higher. If we go back to the dinosaurs 60 years ago, it was about 10 degrees higher. Well, the life was thriving on the Earth. So it is always a question that aren't we a little bit arrogant when we say that this is the only temperature what we selected and this is where we can live and at no other temperature.
Okay, this subject climatology, is an emerging subject in the universities nowadays. So, much physics is involved in this science. Can we associate a physics course together with the climatology in universities?
Yeah, I think definitely, and this would be important. As far as I can see, for example, in Budapest, who are doing climatology in the meteorology department, they have very little physics education. And clearly the basic is physics because, you have the convection of evaporation, and there with the cloud formation. All these are physical processes. Well, the simplest calculation to calculate the temperature of the Earth, what can be expected is just to say that there is a given energy coming to the Earth, and then the Earth re-radiates this energy as a black body. And this already gives quite good results for the temperature of the Earth. And then, of course, there are the corrections. But what I am saying is that all the processes are physical processes. You have the energy flow, the currents in the sea. These are all hydrodynamical. The atmospheric is the gas form of the matter, how it behaves. So clearly, people who are knowing all these fields, this means that you have to know thermodynamics, you have to know hydrodynamics very well, you have to know the statistical laws, statistical physics. These are important subjects, and this should be compulsory. Of course, nowadays climatology is a little bit compartmentalized, because as I was saying before, there are the people physicists who are going over, who know the physics laws. Then there are the mathematicians who are doing the implementation of whatever the physicists are doing or whatever they are thinking about the problem. And then, of course, there are the programmers, because this is, since the programs are enormous, so you have to be a specialist and you have to know really, the programming and the details and the tricks and so on. This is a trade as well. And then the fourth one is again the data handling. Data handling is not trivial nowadays. Most of the people think that, well, I have a time series. But when you have millions and millions of time series, and the bits are going into the, I don't know how many, 10 to the 12 or 10 to the 18 even, then you have problems, okay, which have to be handled. And, well, this has to be taught as well. Probably taught also to physicists as well.
Professor Ash, you shared a lot of ideas and insight about this subject. So I would like to thank you very much for this.
Okay. It was a pleasure to come here and talk to you.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new session on open access bibliographic resources, basic concepts and significance. In this session, we will study about the various open access bibliographic resources related to life sciences, the need and significance of such resources, and how to use the resources for our studies and research. Open access. Open access refers to online research outputs that are free of all restrictions on access, for example, access tolls, and free of many restrictions on use, for example, certain copyright and license restrictions. Open access can be applied to all forms of published research output, including peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed academic journal articles, conference papers, theses, book chapters and monographs. Two degrees of open access can be distinguished: gratis open access, which is online access free of charge, and libre open access, which is online access free of charge plus various additional usage rights. These additional usage rights are often granted through the use of various specific Creative Commons licenses. Libre open access is equivalent to the definition of open access in the Budapest Open Access Initiative and the Berlin Declaration on Open Access to Knowledge in the Sciences and Humanities. There are multiple ways authors can provide open access to their work. One way is to publish it and then self-archive it in a repository where it can be accessed for free, such as the institutional repository or a central repository such as PubMed Central. This is known as green open access. Some publishers require delays or an embargo on when a research output in a repository may be made open access. Several initiatives provide an alternative to the American and English language dominance of existing publication indexing systems, including Index Copernicus, Scielo and Redalyc. A second way authors can make their work open access is by publishing it in such a way that makes their research output immediately available from the publisher. This is known as gold open access, and within the science this often takes the form of publishing an article in either an open access journal or a hybrid open access journal. The latter is a journal whose business model is at least partially based on subscriptions and only provide gold open access for those individual articles for which their authors or their author's institution or funder pay a specific fee for publication, often referred to as an article processing charge. Pure open access journals do not charge subscription fees and may have one of a variety of business models. Many, however, do charge an article processing fee. Widespread public access to the World Wide Web in the late 1900s and early 2000s fueled the open access movement and prompted both the green open access self-archiving of non-open access journal articles and the creation of gold open access journals. Conventional non-open access journals cover publishing costs through access tolls such as subscriptions, site licenses or pay per view. Some non-open access journals provide open access after an embargo period of 6 to 12 months or longer. Active debate over the economics and reliability of various ways of providing open access continues among researchers, academics, librarians, university administrators, funding agencies, government officials, commercial publishers, editorial staff and society publishers. Definition of open access. The term open access itself was first formulated in 3 public statements in the 2000s. The Budapest Open Access Initiative in February 2002, the Bethesda Statement on Open Access Publishing in June 2003, and the Berlin Declaration on Open Access to Knowledge in the Sciences and Humanities in October 2003. and the initial concept of open access refers to an unrestricted online access to scholarly research primarily intended for scholarly journal articles. The Budapest Statement defined open access as follows. There are many degrees and kinds of wider and easier access to this literature. By open access to this literature, we mean its free availability on the public internet, permitting any users to read, download, copy, distribute, print, search or link to the full texts of these articles, crawl them for indexing, pass them as data to software or use them for any other lawful purpose without financial, legal or technical barriers other than those inseparable from gaining access to the internet itself. The only constraint on reproduction and distribution and the only role for copyright in this domain should be to give authors control over the integrity of their work and the right to be properly acknowledged and cited. Motivation or the need for open access. Open access itself, mostly green and gratis, began to be sought and provided worldwide by researchers when the possibility itself was opened by the advent of internet and the World Wide Web. The momentum was further increased by a growing movement for academic journal publishing reform and with it gold and liber open access. Electronic publishing created new benefits as compared to paper publishing, but beyond that it contributed to causing problems in traditional publishing models. The premises behind open access publishing are that there are viable funding models to maintain traditional peer review standards of quality while also making the following changes. Rather than making journal articles accessible through a subscription business model, all academic publications could be made free to read and published with some other cost recovery model such as publication charges, subsidies or charging subscriptions only for the print edition with the online edition gratis or free to read. Rather than applying traditional notions of copyright to academic publications, they could be liber or free to build upon. Authors and researchers. Authors may use form language like this to request an open access license when submitting their work to a publisher. The main reason authors make their articles open accessible to maximize their research impact. A study in 2001 first reported an open access citation impact advantage, and a growing number of studies have confirmed with varying degrees of methodological rigor that open access article is more likely to be used and cited than one behind subscription barriers. For example, a 2006 study in PLOS Biology found that articles published as immediate open access in PNAS were 3 times more likely to be cited than non-open access papers and were also cited more than PNAS articles that were only self-archived. This result has been challenged as an artifact of authors self-selectively paying to publishing their higher quality articles in hybrid open access journals, whereas a 2010 study found that the open access citation advantage was equally big whether self-archiving was self-selected or mandated. Scholars are paid by research funders and or their universities to do research. The published article is the report of the work they have done rather than an item for commercial gain. The more the article is used, cited, applied and built upon, the better for research as well as for the researcher's career. Similarly, the more quickly it is accessible, the better. Open access can reduce publication delays, an obstacle which led some research fields such as high energy physics to adopt widespread preprint access. Some professional organizations have encouraged use of open access. In 2001, the International Mathematical Union communicated to its members that open access to the mathematical literature is an important goal and encouraged them to make available electronically as much of our own work as feasible to enlarge the reservoir of freely available primary mathematical material, particularly helping scientists working without adequate library access. Open access bibliographic resources related to life sciences. There are a number of open access resources related to life sciences, of which the most commonly used ones are PubMed, Biomed Central, PLOS and Site Explorer. PubMed. PubMed was first released in January 1996 as an experimental database under the Emmrc retrieval system with full access to Medline. The word experimental was dropped from the website in April 1997, and on June 26, 1997, free Medline access via PubMed was announced at a Capitol Hill press conference. Use of PubMed has grown exponentially since its introduction. PubMed searches numbered approximately 2 million for the month of June 1997, while current usage typically exceeds 3.5 million searches per day. It is a service of the US National Library of Medicine that provides free access to over 15 million Medline citations back to the 1950s and additional life science journals. PubMed includes links to many sites providing full text articles and other related resources. PubMed comprises more than 25 million citations for biomedical literature from Medline, life science journals and online books. PubMed citations and abstracts include the fields of biomedicine and health, covering portions of the life sciences, behavioral sciences, chemical sciences and bioengineering. PubMed also provides access to additional relevant websites and links to the other NCBI molecular biology resources. Let us now learn how to search articles on PubMed. Searching for articles based on the subject. To search for a specific subject on PubMed, type in your query in the search tab on the top of the web page. Be sure not to use any punctuation, tag or operators. For example, if your subject query is parabens and cancer, type in your subject name and in the tab next to the search tab. Here is the result output of your query. For example, the above subject search is for articles related to parabens and cancer. To search PubMed, enter your concept in phrases into the search box. For most PubMed searches, it is best to be specific. The more terms you enter, the narrower your search will be and fewer irrelevant results you will retrieve. Use no punctuation, for example, no quotation marks. PubMed will find phrases for you. Use no operators such as and. PubMed will add and between concepts. Use no tags. PubMed will differentiate topic words, journal titles and author names. Searching for articles based on the author. For searching articles based on the author, enter the author's last name and initial in the search box. Do not use any punctuation. PubMed retrieves authors with the last name and the initial used in the search. As you can see in the screenshot image, the following results were obtained when a particular author name, for example in this case Hamid Rabia, was given and the articles published by this particular author was obtained. PubMed Advanced Search Builder. You can also use the Advanced Search Builder to obtain information regarding the literature with respect to a specific author. You need to click on Advanced to use the search builder and then select Author from the All Fields menu. The Author search box includes an autocomplete feature. The results obtained for the particular query is as shown in the snapshot. The results obtained here displays all the articles published by the specific author. Use Emmrc to build a better PubMed query. In order to get a targeted PubMed search, we could use the Emmrc or Medical Subject Headings database. This video demonstrates how to use the MESH or Medical Subject Headings database to create a targeted PubMed search. From the PubMed homepage in the More Resources section, click the link to the MESH database. MESH is the controlled vocabulary used for indexing PubMed citations. If we want to find articles about problems associated with giving flu vaccines to individuals with egg allergies, first search for flu vaccine, which returns the MESH term influenza vaccines. The page displays a definition and additional information about the term. In the MESH database, terms are arranged hierarchically by subject categories, with more specific terms arranged beneath broader terms. You will notice that influenza vaccines is listed under viral vaccines, which is under vaccines. Now, click vaccines to display the variety of terms available under this concept. These subheadings may be used to narrow the search. Since we are interested in the negative effects of the flu vaccine, click the subheading Adverse Effects and then click the button Add to the search builder. Since we want to further limit to research articles on egg allergies, search MESH as we did with flu vaccines to find the appropriate MESH term. Then enter egg allergy in the search box at the top of the page. The database displays the MESH term egg hypersensitivity, which should be added to my PubMed search by clicking the Add to Search Builder button. I am now ready to search PubMed, so click Search PubMed. This search retrieves a relatively small number of targeted citations. You will notice that all of these citations are tagged with the text PubMed indexed for Medline. This indicates that the citation has been indexed with MESH terms. But please keep in mind that not all PubMed citations are slated to be MESH indexed, and it may take several weeks for a new citation to be indexed. So using MESH terms will limit your results to a subset of PubMed citations. Using the filter sidebar. This short video demonstrates how to use the PubMed filter sidebar. These filters replace the limits page, bringing the same functionality as limits directly to your search results page. Let us now use the word cancer as a sample search query. This is the result obtained when we type in cancer as a sample search query. In the sidebar, you see a default set of filter categories. To change this list, click Choose Additional Filters, select the desired categories and then click Apply. Note that text availability and publication dates cannot be removed. To narrow the search results, we could filter for articles published in the last 5 years that are also article type clinical trial. A filter's activated message appears. Just as with limits, once a filter is active, it remains in effect for subsequent searches until it is cleared. You can clear active filters in several ways. Use the Clear All links, the clear link for all filters within a category, or click an active filter. Within a category, applying additional filters actually expands your search rather than narrows it. This is because the additional filter is included as an OR term. For example, adding reviews expands my results today from 404 to 787. If you want to narrow your search with review, use search details to change the or to an and. Retrieving citations from a journal issue. To retrieve citations from a journal issue, click on Single Citation Matcher on the PubMed homepage under PubMed Tools. This is the page you obtain. Type the journal or the journal abbreviation in the title box. Enter either the publication date or the volume information. Your retrieval will include all the citations from PubMed in the journal issue. Let us now summarize what we have discussed so far. Open access refers to online research outputs that are free of all restrictions on access, for example access tolls, and free of many restrictions on use. For example, certain copyright and license restrictions. Open access can be applied to all forms of published research output, including peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed academic journal articles, conference papers, theses, book chapters and monographs. There are multiple ways authors can provide open access to their work. One way is to publish it and then self-archive it in a repository where it can be accessed for free, such as their institutional repository or a central repository such as PubMed Central. PubMed was first released in January 1996 as an experimental database under the Emmrc retrieval system with full access to Medline. PubMed includes links to many sites providing full text articles and other related resources. PubMed comprises more than 25 million citations for biomedical literature from Medline, life science journals and online books. PubMed citations and abstracts include the fields of biomedicine and health, covering portions of the life sciences, behavioral sciences, chemical sciences and bioengineering. PubMed also provides access to additional relevant websites and links to the other NCBI molecular biology resources. PubMed does not include information about meeting abstracts, conference proceedings, dissertations, patents or websites. You can now try to answer the following questions. Number 1. What is open access and describe the importance of open access? Number 2. Explain how open access helps authors and scientists in their research. Number 3. List out the various open access resources related to life sciences. Number 4. Describe as to how PubMed was released and how do we search articles based on the subject and author on PubMed. Number 5. Explain how Emmrc is used to build a better PubMed query. Here are a few books for your reference. Bioinformatics, Concepts, Skills and Applications, written by S.C. Rastogi, Namita Mendirata, Parag Rastogi, published by CBS Publishers and Distributors, 1993, first edition. Understanding Bioinformatics, written by Marketa Swellable, Jeremy O. Baum, published by Garland Science Publishers, 2008. Introduction to Bioinformatics, written by Teresa K. Atwood and David J. Parry Smith, published by Pearson Education Limited, 1999. Thank you for watching this program. Let's meet again with another topic.
Hello and welcome to the session on an introduction to the concept of developmental tasks. If you look at the lifespan and growth of individuals, we can see that throughout the course of life, they are judged by both self and others by certain criteria. These criteria are based on widely held expectations regarding age-appropriate and adaptive behavior. This means that at different stages of life, individuals are expected to acquire increasingly complex behaviors in different domains of performance. Let us take an example to understand this further. It is expected that an infant smiles and develops attachment to his or her parents. As the infant becomes a toddler, he or she is expected to walk and talk, develop motor skills and so on. Again, when the toddler grows up and starts attending school, certain other sets of behavior are expected for him or her, such as learning to read, write, understand and follow rules, develop friendships, acquire mathematical skills, etc. At different graded levels of learning, children should develop the expected levels of physical, emotional and intellectual skills and growth. Similarly, as an individual moves from childhood to adolescence, the expectations regarding his or her growth and development change. For instance, adolescent boys and girls are expected to prepare themselves for performing certain roles in the society, learn to obey the rules of the society in which they live, and manage their newly developed sexual feelings and desires in socially and culturally acceptable ways, and so on. As they reach the next level of growth, that is, young adults, they are expected to choose an occupational path or pursue higher education, make their own decisions regarding marriage and personal relationships, take up responsibilities, etc. Likewise, in midlife and old age, individuals are expected to perform certain tasks, meaningful activities and roles that help them come into terms with the transitions that happen in their lives. Thus, we can see that the concept of development has several dimensions such as physical, moral, emotional, social and cognitive. Individuals are expected to confront and master certain tasks that arise at different stages of their development. Successful mastery of these tasks satisfies them and encourages them to move on and take up new challenges. The difficulty in mastering these tasks slows down the progress of individuals, which in turn adversely affects their accomplishments and goals. In order to understand these changes in human development, an American educator named Robert James Havigust identified certain sets of critical tasks that occur at different stages in the lifespan of an individual. He formulated a highly influential theory on human development and education during mid-20th century, namely the theory of developmental tasks. In this unit, we will take a detailed look at Havigust's theory of developmental tasks. By the end of this unit, you will be able to examine the concept of developmental tasks, understand the meaning and definition of a developmental task, analyze its significance in the field of education, trace the historical roots of the concept of developmental tasks, comprehend the sources of developmental tasks as explained by Havigust, examine the stages of development posited by Havigust, classify developmental tasks according to the developmental stages in an individual's lifespan, etc. Many educators and behavioral scientists have expanded and revised the concept of developmental tasks with their research and new findings. However, Havigust is still regarded as one of the most important theorists who successfully explained human development and contributed to the theory of education. Moreover, the concept of developmental tasks has great significance in the field of education as it helps educators plan education efforts in accordance with the needs and requirements of students. Would you like to understand the fundamentals of developmental tasks? As we have seen already, individuals are expected to adapt effectively in the course of their lives. The effectiveness of their adaptation is evaluated by either self or by others based on certain behavioral criteria. In developmental psychology, the behavioral criteria for judging how well an individual is doing in his or her life are called developmental tasks. Havigust defined it as a task that arises at or about a certain period in the life of an individual, successful achievement of which leads to his happiness and to success with later tasks, while failure leads to unhappiness, social disapproval and difficulty with later tasks. Understanding the roots of the concept of developmental tasks will surely help us to have a clear idea regarding the concept. According to some educational scholars, the concept of developmental tasks has its origins in classical Greek thoughts. However, The modern use of this concept can be traced back to the 19th century, especially to the idea of adaptation. Two major figures who contributed to the study of adaptation in the 19th century were Charles Darwin and Sigmund Freud. You may be somewhat familiar with the concept of adaptation according to Darwin and Freud. As you know, during the 19th century, the idea of adaptation underwent a massive shift. Later, with the works of Darwin and Freud, adaptation began to be considered as a dynamic process. One of Darwin's greatest contributions was his theory of natural selection that served as the mechanism for evolution. The process of natural selection acted through individual variations in how people adapt to situations and variations in their fitness as well as reproductive success. Likewise, Freud's ideas of id and ego also offered a different view on the long-standing understanding of adaptation. In his structural theory of personality, Freud put forward the concept of id and ego. The notions of developmental tasks are evident in another well-known and controversial theory of Freud, namely the psychosexual stages theory of development. Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development is another milestone in the evolution of the concept of developmental tasks. The contemporary developmental task theory emerged with the works of Erik Erikson, a German-born American developmental psychologist and psychoanalyst who conceptualized different psychosocial stages. This theory is popularly known as Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. According to this theory, there are 8 stages through which a healthy developing human should pass, starting from infancy to late adulthood. An individual confronts and masters new challenges as she or he moves from one stage to another. Moreover, each stage is built upon the successful completion and mastery of challenges in the stage that precedes it. If a person does not successfully master a challenge she or he confronts at one stage, then that challenge is likely to resurface as a problem in the later stages of development. Erikson's conceptualization of psychosocial stage is similar to the concept of developmental tasks, in which individuals are expected to develop and behave according to certain socio-cultural expectations at different periods of their development. Now, let us come to Robert Havigust's theory of developmental tasks. As already mentioned, Robert Havigust is often regarded as the originator of developmental task theory. His use of the concept was highly influenced by Erikson's psychosocial stages of development. According to Havigust, an individual is a part of a larger society. As a result, he or she has to face and meet a series of expectations in the course of his or her life. Moreover, an individual's success and achievement is judged based on the degree to which he or she is perceived to be meeting those expectations. Havigust's concept of developmental tasks is borrowed from the ideas of both Freud and Erikson. What are the important sources of developmental tasks? According to Havigust, there are 3 major sources from which developmental tasks arise. They are physical maturation, socio-structural and cultural forces, and personal values and aspirations. Though some of the tasks arise primarily from one source, most of them arise from a combination of these 3 sources acting together. Now, let us briefly look at these 3 sources. First one, physical maturation. Some tasks arise from biological maturation of an individual. A child learning to talk and walk is an example of this. Socio-structural and cultural forces is another source of developmental tasks. Certain tasks have their source in the pressures an individual faces from the society and culture she or he lives in. Such tasks are based on the laws and culturally shared expectations regarding development. A child learning to read is an example of this. Though the development of reading skills is dependent on the cognitive development of a child, this process occurs primarily as a response to the cultural pressures from the society. Learning to act as responsible citizens is another example of a developmental task arising out of socio-structural and cultural sources. Personal values and aspirations also leads to developmental tasks. Some developmental tasks arise from the personal values and aspirations a person acquires as his or her personality matures. Choosing a certain occupation and learning the skills required for that occupation are examples of tasks emerging out of personal values. Thus, the personality of a person guides him or her in the development during the later stages of development. Now, let us proceed to discuss the basic tenets of developmental tasks. We have seen the definition, meaning and sources of developmental tasks. Based on these, we can identify certain basic tenets of this concept. They are: developmental tasks emerge and change as a function of development in context. Some of the developmental tasks are universal in nature. Some of the developmental tasks are socially, culturally and contextually rooted. Multiple dimensions and domains of human development are included in developmental tasks. The success and failure in meeting developmental tasks appropriate for a specific stage and age indicates the success and failure of developmental tasks in the stages that follow it. The success or failure of achieving developmental tasks often has consequences. Problems and negative consequences can be prevented and success can be promoted through strategic interventions. Are you eager to know more about developmental tasks? Now, let us discuss the developmental tasks of different stages. Having us define specific sets of development tasks for individuals at different stages of their development. The entire lifespan of an individual is divided into 6 major stages, namely infancy and early childhood from 0 to 5 years, middle childhood from 6 to 12 years, adolescence from 13 to 18 years, early adulthood from 19 to 30 years, middle adulthood from 30 to 60 years and later maturity from 60 years onwards. Of these 6 stages, education, learning and instruction are important in the first 3 stages. These are the stages when children receive the major part of their education from schools and colleges. Higher forms of learning and education happen during the early adulthood period too. In India, early childhood is the preschool age. Students receive primary education and parts of secondary education during the middle childhood age. Adolescence is when students undergo the later stages of secondary education and the entire higher secondary education. Therefore, this module will focus on the developmental tasks of these 3 stages of development. However, we will briefly touch upon the developmental tasks of other 3 stages too. We may begin with developmental tasks of infancy and early childhood, that is preschool age. The early childhood is a crucial stage in the all-round development of a child. Physical, language and emotional developments occur during this stage. As a child starts going to a preschool, he or she slowly develops some of the basic social skills too. Here are the major development tasks of infancy and early childhood as described by Havigust. Learning to walk, learning to take solid foods, learning to talk and respond when being talked to, learning to control the elimination of body waste, learning sex differences and sexual modesty, achieving physiological stability, forming simple concepts and learning language to describe social and physical reality, getting ready to read, learning to relate oneself emotionally to parents, siblings and other people, and learning to distinguish between right and wrong and beginning to develop conscience. The second stage of development is middle childhood or primary school age. During this stage, children receive primary education and they start developing social skills as part of interacting with their peers and others. Language development reaches a more advanced level and children undergo massive changes in physical growth too. Also, it is at this stage that the mathematical skills and writing skills of children develop. The major development tasks of middle childhood are as follows. Learning physical skills necessary for ordinary games, building wholesome attitude towards oneself as a growing organism, learning to get along with age mates, learning an appropriate masculine or feminine social role, developing fundamental skills in reading, writing and calculating, developing concepts necessary for everyday living, developing conscience, morality and a scale of values, achieving personal independence and developing attitudes towards social groups and institutions. Developmental task of adolescents or secondary and higher secondary school age is very interesting to learn. Many educational psychologists and scholars consider adolescence as the most important, complex and difficult stage of human development. At this stage, boys and girls move from childhood and enter into adulthood. A lot of mental, physical, emotional and intellectual changes happen during this period. A child is expected to prepare for adulthood and replace his or her childish attitudes and behaviors with adult behavior. Moreover, it is a stage of rapid and revolutionary changes as children experience new learning, anxieties, worries, conflicts, complexities, more complex emotions, self-assertion and boldness. Needless to say, adolescent boys and girls experience extensive physical changes and emotions related to those physical changes. The developmental tasks of adolescents include achieving new and more mature relations with age mates of both sexes, achieving a masculine or feminine social role in performing tasks, accepting one's physique and using the body effectively, achieving emotional independence, preparing for marriage and family life, preparing for an economic career, acquiring a set of values and an ethical system as a guide to behavior, developing an ideology and desiring and achieving socially responsible behavior. The stages that follow adolescence, namely early adulthood, middle adulthood and later maturity, also have a set of developmental tasks. Getting started on an occupation, taking up civic responsibilities, finding a congenial social group, selecting a mate, starting a family, etc. are some of the important development tasks of early adults. During middle adulthood, individuals achieve adult social and civic responsibility, attain satisfactory career achievement, accept the physiological changes of middle age and develop adult leisure activities. The developmental tasks of the later maturity stage includes adjusting to decreasing strength and health, establishing relations with one's own age group, adjusting to retirement and reduced income, etc. What do you know about the significance of development tasks in education? The concept of development tasks is very important in the field of education. Here are some of the reasons. Importance to schools. The initial years of an individual, in which much of the development takes place, are spent in schools. Also, many of the development tasks such as learning to read, write, etc. are directly related to learning skills and cognitive development. Development tasks of different periods points the need of proper training. Childhood and adolescence are two extremely important stages of human development. Educators and teachers have a crucial role to play during these stages. The harmonious development of a student's personality depends greatly on the education and training he or she receives during childhood and adolescent years. For progress and development of a country also, the concept of development tasks has serious implications. Majority of the population of a country consists of school and college going students aged between 12 and 18. If a country has to progress and develop, proper training should be given to children and adolescents. Therefore, it is important that teachers and education policy makers are aware of the development tasks expected at each stage of a student's development. For the elimination of problems, as we have already seen, The challenges and tasks a student confronts at a particular stage should be met during that stage itself. The failure to meet the task at one stage may cause problems at another stage. So, those who work in the field of education should understand these tasks so that proper help can be offered to students at the right time. The concept of development task is important in the construction and evaluation of curriculum too. The needs, abilities and interests of students vary at different development stages. While framing a curriculum, educators should pay proper attention to the development tasks of the age group for whom it is being prepared. The concept of development tasks informs the process of institutional planning. For instance, libraries are required to develop the reading and language skills of students. Provisions for sports should be made to meet the requirements of physical and motor development of children and adolescents. Likewise, fine arts, club activities, co-scholastic activities, etc. should also be planned based on the developmental tasks expected at each stage. For specifying course content and instructional objectives, most importantly, the concept of development task is highly useful in specifying the course content. It also helps identify and formulate instructional objectives in specific terms. They serve the purpose of a guideline by informing teachers and educators what to expect from students at different stages. Students will also know what is being expected of them, and hence they will feel motivated in the teaching learning process. For providing appropriate environment, as we have seen, students are expected to meet specific development tasks at different development periods. However, it should be noted here that students will be able to achieve these tasks only if they are provided appropriate atmosphere. Thus, proper understanding of development tasks and behavioral expectations help teachers use the available resources and prepare suitable atmosphere to facilitate the achievement of those tasks and expectations. Use of resources without wastage. Resource management, be it material, financial or human resource, is an important aspect of education. The development task theory helps educators use the right resources at the right time. This not only facilitates individual development but also ensures that resources are not wasted. Creating purposeful education. Instruction should be offered to students keeping in mind the goals they are expected to achieve during the process. Developmental tasks provide guidance and purposefulness to the process of instruction and instructional planning. An understanding of what to expect from students at various periods of their development help educators plan the timing of education efforts. Now, you can try to answer the questions given here. What is a developmental task? What are the contributions of Darwin and Freud to the idea of adaptation? What is Erickson's psychosocial stage theory of development? What is Havig's theory of developmental tasks? How is this theory influenced by Freud's and Erickson's ideas? Hope that you may go through the reference books listed here. Advanced Education Psychology, written by Chauhan SS and published by Vikas Publishing House, New Delhi in the year 2009. Teacher's Handbook for a Functional Behavior Based Curriculum, Communicable Models and Guides for Classroom Use, written by Drummeller S.J. and published by Educational Technology Publications, New Jersey in 1972. Handbook of Lifespan Development, written by Fingerman K.L., Berg C.A., Smith G.A. and Antonucci T.C. as editors and published by Springer Publishing Company, New York in the year 2011. An Introduction to Child Development, written by Keenan T. and Evans S. and published by Sage Publications, London in 2009. Theories of Human Development, written by Newman B. M. and Newman P. R. and published by Lawrence Earlbaum Associates, New Jersey in the year 2010. Development Through Life, a Psychosocial Approach, written by Newman B. and Newman P. and published by Cengage Learning, Balmount, CA in the year 2011. Educational Psychology, Teaching and Learning Perspectives, written by Ramalingam P. and published by McGraw-Hill Education, New Delhi in 2013. Thank you for watching this program. We can meet again with another topic. Have a nice day.